I am here with Nance Bos. Nancy, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, John. It's great to be here.
It's great to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's good to catch up, and we've done podcasts together before in the past, and it's nice to touch base again.
Yeah, and since I am older since the last time we talked,
I'm not.
Let's talk about the voice getting old.
Okay, we can talk about your voice getting old, sure.
So you have a book that you are the co-author of, Singing Through the Change. Did I get that right?
Close. There's no the. It's Singing Through Change. Yep.
Singing Through Change. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'll remove the. We'll edit this later. And,
okay.
So tell me what inspired you to want to write this book?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I wrote it with two brilliant people, Joanne Bozeman and Kate Fraser-Neely. And Singing Through Change. Now, the word change for women, historically, when you go through the change, has been code word for menopause. And for one thing, it's super sad that there needs to be a code word. So that was not our intention, that it be the code word, the change. But it's still understood that women go through this massive hormonal change because women's bodies are just so dependent upon estrogen and progesterone cycles for decades that when this stops, and it's not a nice just coasting to a stop for most people, it is a crazy roller coaster ride to a stop, and it changes the voice. And nobody's ever really talked about it on any big scope. You'll find an article or a video here or there or a study here or there, but nobody's ever put it all together. And this affects millions of women. So in the United States alone, approximately 26 million women sing in choirs, let alone all the other ways that we sing and all the other women who sing in the world. And every single one of those women is going to go through a midlife voice change. Then that eases into an aging voice change, two separate things. And so writing this book with Kate and Joanne was our way of learning about our own journeys. And we interviewed over 50 women for the book for a study. And so telling their stories and then tying in the science, because it's all quite complicated. I'm really just jumping off a cliff here. I hope you don't mind, but it's
not at
really
all. Jump away.
It's really quite complicated about, like, okay, my voice is changing. Is it because I'm singing and talking all day, so my voice is fatigued from wear and tear over decades? Or is it because my hormones are changing, so the viscosity of the mucus on my vocal folds has changed? Is that what the cause is? Or am I actually experiencing physical changes to the muscles of my vocal folds? And in all those cases, the answer is yes. And then when you put all those together and add in the possibility of disease or illness or life stresses, being in the sandwich generation. So when we write Singing Through Change, we're talking about all of that. And there's no way to say, this is what's going to happen to your voice as you go through your late 30s, 40s, and 50s. We can't say that because everybody's life is so unique and different. So instead, in the book, we told it through the stories of 50 plus different women and how they experienced it and what they did to get through their changes. And then we add in the science and the facts to help support what they experienced.
When does this whole aging process begin in the voice?
It generally in the scientific community is considered to start at age 60. That's when aging voice is acknowledged. But of course, that is a binary black and white moment in time, right? And we are not. So let me just pull it way back and think of, let's talk about the male voice, starting just after the voice change, right? So a lot of people might think that, and I'm sure that you're very aware of this, that the male voice change happens and then it's done. But we know that it can take up to a decade for a male's voice to settle, right? For girls, we think it's a year or two. By the time they're 15 or 16, in our heads, we think that their voice has settled, right? But that's not true. That is not the voice for the rest of the life, because as we get taller, as our necks get thicker or thinner, as the shape of our jaw changes as we age, a 50-year-old's face looks different than it did when she was 20, and that's all changes to the structure, the actual physiology. So since the actual physiology of the instrument is changing with our weight gains and losses, hardening of the cartilage in our ribs and in our throats, We are always changing. So at what point do more aging voice problems or issues or changes get on people's radar? Maybe 60 and up. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, that's fascinating because I've been asking myself all those same questions, and I am just below this binary date, if you will. But I had extreme weight gain, and I just didn't take care of myself for a good portion of my 40s, my roaring 40s, if you will. And then made a just dramatic shift and lost a lot of weight really fast. And the one thing that came out of that is my voice was not only different, it just felt weak. And I remember, because I lost weight so fast, feeling like, wow, this doesn't even feel like my body when I was walking. And then when I would go to sing, it's like, this is not the voice I know.
Wow. Yes. Now that was a massive amount of weight, right? 100 or so pounds. Is that correct?
It was 150 pounds in 8 months, which is, I don't know if that's how I do it again, but the idea was get it off and be done with it, use the momentum.
I remember how you were celebrating when it happened too. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I wasn't celebrating my singing, and I was thinking like, okay, it's just temporary, it'll come back. And it's been a slow process, and I don't know if I've gotten 100% back.
Right. Yeah. And so it's certainly going to be different. And so that's one of the things that we talk about in Singing Through Change is there probably is no going back. And so then you find out how to optimize different. So for you, I'm guessing, because I know nothing about weight loss inside of the throat, right? But I'm guessing that you have a lot less fat cells inside of your throat and around your vocal folds. And so there is less mass there, right? And so since there's less mass, there's going to be less literal volume, and that's going to affect your acoustical volume. And so unless you were to perhaps get an injection pumping up your vocal folds again to the mass they were before, it probably won't ever be the same. So why would you do that, right? So,
and I'm not dealing with, obviously, being a male, the hormonal issues that would come.
Yes.
And what is it? Do you find that the change is different? Singing through change in different voice types?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, soprano versus mezzo.
Yeah, and it's not. I'm so glad you asked that because this is an exciting one to answer. The change would be more noticed in different voice types. The change is happening to every woman, whether they notice it or not. And if you're Mavis Staples, you fully and completely embrace that low range that you've always enjoyed, but now you're knocking it out of the park, right? Now, if instead you were the Queen of the Night aria and your upper range was all you cared about, you could feel like everything about your voice has just been pulled out from underneath you. Your entire foundation has been destroyed. And there's people who identify so strongly with their voice type that, it's their email address, soprano@gmail.com is somebody. And that's their complete identity. So, wow, if we think that we're stagnant, I am this, which is more true in the classical world than anywhere else, right? So what Joanne and Kate and I discovered in our conversations was that the classical soprano is going to take the biggest hit to her career and identity. The soprano who sings Broadway or pop or R&B, she's going to adjust her keys. She's going to adjust her repertoire, maybe not do the same riffs she used to do, maybe say, whistle tone isn't what it used to be. I'll just skip that part. So she'll be able to cope better than the woman who literally can't be employed now because she lost those notes. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm getting my next question. In terms of readjusting technique, besides losing the top end and working with commercial contemporary singers, primarily myself, I've noticed really from about E flat above middle C to the G above middle C, which for a very young voice, they tend to think of, this is my chest voice. This is before my transition. This now starts to become a transition. And G's in particular get really tricky as the voice begins to change.
Yeah. So can you, before I say anything about that, can you describe a little to me what tricky means for you in your body? I mean, we're all different.
Yeah. So that these notes that kind of felt a little more binary, if you will, that they were squarely within chest voice. Now, the technique is as the singer approaches their transition, F sharp, G, this upper chest has to have a little more modification. They maybe have to be a little more careful with the vowels. It will tend to want to pull or flip, whereas before it did not. It tends to want to pull to the opposite poles of the voice.
Yeah.
You know, to whoop or yell.
Exactly. And so the idea of cross training the voice and working the whole voice is more essential than ever as we age, right? So make sure that your voice is in balance from left to right or top to bottom, however you look at it. Spend more time doing vocal exercises in the part of your voice that is weaker, right? I like to think of it like a seesaw. And if your seesaw is out of balance, then you've got to do the exercises to get it back in balance. That's part of it. But John, also, that viscosity of the mucus that I mentioned earlier is a real thing, right? So here was a news flash to me about a year ago. Saliva is different than mucus. I did not know this. I don't know why I didn't know this. They're two different words, but saliva is in the mouth, mucus is in the throat. And they have two different sets of glands. Right.
Well, I just learned something.
Well, there we go. I'm not the only one that's like, duh. At any rate. So we have saliva glands, we have mucus glands. If we're taking allergy pills or if we're taking other medications that cause those to dry up, then we are causing vocal fold dryness through the medications that we're taking, right? Sudafed, Allegra, Zyrtec, those types of things. And there's other medications that are for real serious diseases that cause mucus to dry up. Diuretics too. So, and saliva, they both dry up. That also happens with aging. So as people age, those glands become less effective and they produce both less mucus and thicker mucus. And the same thing happens to our eyes too. You know, when you look into an older person's eyes, they might be a little bit yellow with more veins and maybe even cakey. Yeah, gross, right? And none of us want those old person eyes. Well, that comes with those lubricating glands drying up. So I suspect, without any foundation of science to necessarily say this is the way it is that viscosity makes a big difference through that passaggio, through that break. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, this is a particular issue that I've been struggling with is I've been going crazy with this thick mucus on my folds.
Yes.
And going like, okay, what am I doing? I mean, I don't eat hours before bedtime. I mean, I rarely eat anything past late afternoon. I'm, very strict with my diet. I watch spices, anything. And I've been getting that. And it's actually, I've been going to see a homeopath just to try different solutions to this. And I'm feeling like I'm getting a bit of relief, but that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and I love what you just said.
I'm being a guy making this about men.
No, you're perfect. It's great. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, but that is absolutely an issue. And what I find is when I'm dealing with this thick mucus, what does the body want to do when it's unsure, when it feels instability? Is tension.
Tension,
in
exactly.
the transition, as I approach the transition, because the
it might even hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't really hurt as much as I have to watch the frustration, and then I have to watch the over adjustment of technique. Yeah. And this is something that I believe you speak to in the book is when people are working these changes in their voice, because we don't want to admit we're getting older.
Yes.
We keep trying to force it back to what it was.
Yeah.
We change our technique.
Yeah. I'm super excited to talk about that. But just for a minute, back to the assumption for the younger voice is if you have extra mucus, your body is providing the mucus as a bandage to heal something, right? And that's what we tell our younger students. And that would be the assumption that you've got acid reflux or you've got allergies or you're getting over a virus or something. In the older voice, that extra mucus is just there. So you actually want to probably see an ear, nose, and throat doctor or someone else who can talk to you about that mucus. And a lot of people, older people, use the personal steamers to create that moisture. So, but going on from there, yes, there's a woman in the book named that we called Elaine. We changed everyone's names in the book, and Elaine had this beautiful lyric soprano voice that was highly trained at one of the top tier U.S. schools from one of the most famous voice teachers there is. So this was in her 20s. And then she moved away and she's a professor and she's doing great things, but her voice starts to get out of control, like big wobble and tinny sound. And it wasn't her technique because she was doing the same thing that this amazing teacher had taught her to do and had gotten her career. So she goes to another well-known, amazing teacher, highly respected. And together, this professor is struggling with singing and this teacher are trying to figure out how she can sound like herself and what she needs to adjust in her technique. Well, the problem is that she's now past 30 years in this body. She probably weighs 30 pounds more. The cartilage is a little bit more hardened in the throat. The shape of her face has changed a little bit. And she at this time was just entering menopause, which means her vocal folds have now changed the muscle mass a little bit. The lubrication has changed. She will never be that 20-year-old singer again. And in fact, her voice had lowered a little bit. So she went to a teacher who took her back to primal sounds and gave her repertoire that she never would have considered singing before, like some Jason Mraz instead of opera arias. And so she had no expectation of what she should sound like, and she started to feel her voice. And instead of listening for the sound, which was causing muscle tension to get her larynx higher and tighter, and her tongue, therefore, and her breathing, therefore, she started to be like, oh, a deep breath. That's what that feels like. Oh, relaxing my spine, and she started to feel it and then started listening again. This is my new voice. And this is the voice that I'm going to move forward with. But that actually begs the question of, for the perimenopausal woman. So there is this period leading up to menopause that can last up to 10 years. And it can start for women in their late 30s and or early 40s. It can go for up to 10 years. And during that time, the estrogen and the progesterone levels are just up and down, not just on a month-to-month basis, but sometimes day to day. So one day, the woman might have extra fluid on her vocal folds, and the next day, her vocal folds might be dehydrated. And it's not through her fault. It's through this hormone fluctuation. She doesn't know from day to day what she's going to get. And this roller coaster ride where a woman shows up and says, last week this was fine, or yesterday this was fine, or I don't know if I'm going to be able to sing that gig because today it feels like crap. And then she shows up at the gig and it's the best she's ever sung. That kind of vocal chaos happens in this period called perimenopause. And I'm happy to say that once a woman lands on the other side of menopause where the estrogen and progesterone have pretty much leveled out to nearly nothing, then she's stable again. And she can be like, okay, this is my voice now. Now I'm just dealing with aging voice from here on out. Whew, thank goodness. So that's
all we need is more chaos in this system. Yeah.
Yeah. As if it isn't personal enough. Let's throw some more in. Yeah.
You bring up the wobble, and this tends to be like if someone was going to imitate an older person singing, they may go to this, the wobble sound.
Yeah.
And what is causing the wobble, and what are steps that singers can take to decrease this wobble effect?
Okay. I'm going to use the female wobble.
Yes.
So let's start with the idea that there are many different things that could cause it. And let's just discuss a few of them. A lot of times it's been pointed to abdominal strength. If you don't have the core strength that you need, you're not going to be able to support the sound, right? So if you've got a 70-year-old woman who is completely lax in the middle, no abdominal strength whatsoever, yeah, you might want to recommend a minute of planks 3 times a day and see if that changes, because what that'll change is control over the stream of air. right? You want a consistent stream of air coming through your vocal folds. So if that consistent stream of air is not happening, then yep, that's abdominal strength probably. Or in the case of Elaine, it is trying to grab onto her rib cage and keep everything tight so that nothing changes so she can sing that soprano sound. So then for her, it's too much tension in her rib cage in her case, and learning how to relax that breath open. Okay, so then we move up into the vocal folds. In the vocal folds themselves, you now have, in the woman who's gone through menopause, you have usually less muscle mass in the vocal folds. It depends on her level of testosterone that naturally occurs in her body, and it depends on voice use. If she's got a job where she's, say, I am talking like this over a PA system all day long, every day, that muscle mass is going to stay there, right? But if it's somebody who's suddenly maybe even retiring from their job, and they're just not talking very much, those vocal folds are going to get thinner. And that is going to cause a different gateway for the air. So the air flow now needs to be managed differently with the vocal folds. Then we go on up into the throat where maybe there are masses in the pharynx, the throat, that weren't there before. Well, those can cause fluctuations and cause that wobble. And then the one that we've been talking about probably for the last decade in voice is tongue tension. So the tongue, if it's at all tense, can misalign the voice box, the larynx, in a way that you don't want it to. The literal shape of the pharynx, the voice, the throat, has changed for all of us as we age, and the way that we used to use our tongue is probably not the way we should use it now. So for me, when I landed on this side of menopause, which is beyond, my wobble started in, and I realized it was because of the way that I was using my tongue in the back of my mouth, and I now cannot go back to the way that I used my tongue before. And then let's add one more thing in, and that is neurological disorders. If you are a person whose hands shake or some other nerve disorder that's causing poor stimulation of the nerves to the throat, that can cause the wobble too. That was a really long answer.
No. I mean, we have to accept when we take this instrument as our challenge that you never land.
Yeah.
You never, there's no ultimate place where if I work this hard and get it together, boom, there's this nice secure place that I will stay on. It's constantly shifting on us.
Yeah.
And I think you bring up such a beautiful point that you can't go back, and things that worked before are not necessarily going to work going forward. And even the changes we make now to our technique may not be what we need 5 years from now.
You got it. That's exactly right. And it's important that saying that we are the stories that we tell ourselves, that is the only way to get through this with joy, is to choose the story that you tell yourself, that I deserve this more mature, awesome voice with so much presence, or I deserve this voice that does this now. And maybe it can't do that anymore. That's fine. I can work with that. This is what I get to do now. If you can work in that story, like, as I mentioned earlier, Mavis Staples has done so well, then you can move forward with all the gifts that you were given.
Mindset. Is so vitally important to this instrument.
Huge.
I would even argue more so, although it's important in every instrument, but this instrument primarily, because the quality of our thought equals the quality of our singing.
Oh gosh, I'm keeping that one. Yeah. The quality of our thought equals the quality of our singing.
And it's so easy to beat ourselves up, to become discouraged, because even when we're young and in prime health, it changes day to day. So as we go through the rough seas of this change, the inner dialogue we have, and the is going to really have a profound effect. And I think we need to approach our voice with a sense of grace and almost forgiveness and acceptance that this is the voice I have today. Yeah. Can't go to Guitar Center and buy a different one.
No new strings.
No new strings.
Yeah.
And I think what is so important with what you're doing is we tend to suffer these things alone. And we tend to think this is just happening to me. I've done something wrong. My gift has been stolen. Was I even that good in the first place? All of these things.
Yes.
And you are creating events where singers can come together. Yes.
Yeah. We're creating community around change. That's exactly right. Where it's expected that your voice is changing and how to celebrate the new you. Yeah. Absolutely. What I've done in partnership with my sister is, my literal sister, is that we've created an events brand called Celebrate Singing. And we just launched it on Tuesday, and our first event's coming up on July 9th. We had a conference in April, an online conference. It was a huge success. And that's what started this. And it's an opportunity for people to get together and learn about the changes that we're talking about, because nobody's really talked about these things before and how to apply them. Yeah. But also to hear that you're not alone and it's not your fault. And that is the biggest takeaway from the book and from the conference. You're not alone. It's not your fault. Let's celebrate who you are. Yeah.
And how can people find out more information about this?
Fabulous. The site is celebratesinging.live, Live. And the book, Singing Through Change, is also singingthroughchange.com. So you can go there for just the book. Celebratesinging.live is the events and the community.
And I can also highly recommend your book, Singing 101.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for saying that, because what you have to do, whether you can afford or want to go to a voice teacher or not, is every once in a while you got to check in with the foundation and the basics. And I got to say, Amazon just categorized that book as a 12 to 18-year-old homeschool book, and I'm kind of mad, because I think it actually applies more to the 62-year-old than it does to the 8-year-old. But at any rate, Amazon. So yeah, it's rediscovering your instrument as it changes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also amazing. Your book has been out for quite a while, and it keeps knocking my book down the charts.
Oh, no. I don't think so. I've been visiting lately, and your book's above mine, and I'm getting ticked off.
The battle is on.
It is.
Nancy, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, John. This has been great.